All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, there's a whole lot of cringe going on at the Democratic Convention, from Billy Porter's performance, John Kasich's fork at the road, having Bill Clinton give a rousing, no, not really, speech on the same day that pictures were revealed showing him getting a massage from Jeffrey Epstein victims only 2 years after leaving the Oval Office. But something is beginning to dawn on me. It makes me very sad to report this all. All signs point to the GOP convention being even more cringe, or at very least the same, and it's a perfect reflection of the state of the Trump campaign today. Got a small taste of it Monday on the campaign trail when President Trump and the Trump campaign highly publicized a speech that he delivered in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, in which he branded Joe Biden a, quote, Trojan horse for socialism. Let's take a listen to that speech one more time and let's digest what exactly he said.
Is just a Trojan horse for socialism. He is. He's a Trojan horse. He has no clue, but the people around him are tough, and they're smart, but we disagree with them very, very strongly. They're mean, and they're angry, like her.
So let's think about that. Joe Biden is a Trojan horse for socialism is the message that they're going with in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, a state that voted Republican for the first time in nearly 30 years, explicitly because Trump didn't sound like a typical Republican that normally ran for office. The Trojan horse for socialism bit sounds a lot like something that Scott Walker or Paul Ryan would say, and you can ask both of them how it worked out whenever they tried to compete statewide for their own home state, Wisconsin's vote, either as governor or as vice presidential nominee. Just to give you an idea of how far off base Trump's message today is from what it was in 2016, I present to you a speech he gave exactly 4 years ago yesterday in the state of Wisconsin during the 2016 campaign. The speech was in Milwaukee. It represented Trump's attempt at wooing the black community, where he said, quote, 1 in 5 manufacturing jobs has disappeared in Milwaukee since we fully opened our markets to China, and many African-American neighborhoods have borne the brunt of this hit. Continuing, he said, the corrupt system is trying to stop me. I've been paying my own way. The voters in the Republican Party this year defied the donors, the consultants, the power brokers, and chose a nominee from outside our failed, corrupt, and broken system. The other party, the Democratic Party, nominated the personification of special interest corruption. The Democratic Party rigged the nomination to give it to Hillary Clinton, thus giving the soul of their party this year to special interests. A little bit of a different tune there, huh? How is it that that candidate who won Wisconsin 4 years ago with that message has strayed so far from it? Joe Biden isn't a Trojan horse for socialism. It's honestly worse. He's a Trojan horse for the status quo, for neoliberalism, for the system that destroyed Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota, so many other industrial states who fell victim to our leaders' promises that globalism would deliver a better future for them. It never did. The elites cashed their checks and they moved on, while workers in that state and other states remained destitute with no hope for a better life for them or for their children. But Trump has made his choice. The socialism sucks message is embedded deep within the DNA of the RNC and many of the other professional Republican forces who he apparently listens to and has decided to empower in his administration and within his campaign. This has far-reaching implications because it raises the ultimate question: who will succeed him? Trump is not wedded to the reality-based message that vaulted him to the office in 2016, so any generic Republican can reasonably claim the mantle of Trumpism, whatever that means, and simply outrageously flatter him in order to gain his endorsement. That was perfectly on display yesterday with some new reporting on the 2024 implications of the upcoming Republican National Convention. Lo and behold, there doesn't seem to be a lot of commitment to Trumpism among the so-called stars that will be speaking, including former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, Iowa Senator Joni Ernst, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, and of course, Vice President Mike Pence. The list isn't finalized, but you know who's not on that list? Well, Missouri Senator Josh Hawley, despite the fact that he's one of the only ones to actually have a policy legacy of Trump's actual message. And, you know, he actually beat an incumbent Democratic senator in a swing state with an explicitly nationalist message. The reason behind him not speaking? Well, quote, Republicans say they're looking to highlight minority and female office holders during the convention. What does it matter if a minority or female candidate espouses the same corporatist ideology that they've saying for decades? The only people who see a difference are the media. The voters who are actually affected by those policies can see right through the difference. Just to give you a taste of what some of these women and diverse candidates believe, let's review, shall we? Let's start with South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, who is supposedly a rising star. Just yesterday, she announced that she is rejecting Trump's executive order's distribution of extra unemployment funds. Why? Well, because according to her, quote, many businesses are looking to relocate to South Dakota because of the decisions that we made during the pandemic. South Dakota is open for business. That applies to our business owners and their employees. Let's keep going down the list. How about Iowa Senator Joni Ernst? Hilariously enough, this little graphic came across my screen when I was writing this radar. Ernst with an actual photo of little lobsters with hats on them talking about some excessive spending by bureaucrats. To be clear, I'm not against wasteful spending, but the sign, the speech, which she supposedly cares about, pretty clear to me. From that photo, it should be clear to you too. Tim Scott may be best known by the general public for his efforts on police reform. To me, he's best known for the signature issue that got him into the GOP tax bill, Opportunity Zones, a longtime libertarian dream, which, surprise, surprise, not exactly the working class dream that it was presented as at the time. Those are only the less high-profile stars that you may not know. But it shows a clear direction that the GOP is taking with Donald Trump's permission, or at the very least, ignorance. And it spells absolute electoral doom. The next Republican candidate for president, who can sound like Trump did in August 2016 in Wisconsin, will be the only one who has a shot at winning the Republican nomination again and winning the presidency. The rest of them, maybe they'll get the nomination. Come November, they will get trounced so badly, they will wish that they were Mitt Romney. And it's pretty incredible, right? I mean, I've bashed identity politics, and it's embraced by the Democratic Party, and I still think they're largely the major purveyors of that. But that's identity politics for corporatism. Same thing that the Republicans are doing. Oh, Tim Scott, Joni Ernst, Christian, they all believe the same thing.
All these people,
it's all right there.
All these people that you mentioned, you could see them all speak it. You could see certainly Kasich and Colin Powell were speaking at the RNC year, so you could see the people that you mentioned, the Kristi Noem and the Nikki Haley and all those people speaking at the DNC years from now. They're all basically the same and interchangeable. And the failure, Brianna Joy Gray tweeted this actually yesterday. The utter hollowness of identity politics is perfectly embodied by Colin Powell.
Yes, exactly.
That you're going to be great. Now we have a diverse voice lying us into war.
Fine.
Awesome.
Yeah, do you feel better?
That was fantastic.
Does that bring your brother back, or your husband back, or somebody you lost in Iraq?
But you did comparing and contrasting those two speeches in Wisconsin is really pretty remarkable, because we've been talking about this year, how he's forgotten why he got elected, or never understood in the first place, or has been convinced it's otherwise, or something. And I'd be interested in your take on what exactly happened there. But I was looking last night at the DNC. A lot of people's attention was caught by Rhode Island in the roll call. They featured this chef holding out calamari, and they were very excited about calamari as their state dish. And then the Washington Post interviewed this guy after the fact, and he's not actually a Joe Biden supporter, the calamari guy. He had what, in my view, was one of the most honest and most relatable takes of the entire DNC. He's not sure he's voting for Biden because he says, everything to me is always the same. They say they're going to change health plans, the economy, the workforce. The only thing that really changes is the price of things going up and all these rich people making more money.
There you go.
Back in 2016,
that's what he sounded
Trump made a credible case to people like that. Look, it turned out to be fraudulent. We all know all the flaws, all of that. But he made a credible case to that man and so many more like him. This time around, nothing.
What does that guy? What does that guy care about Trojan horse for socialism? Right? How does that speak to his life, his problems, his need whatsoever? He just identified the problem. Rich people keep getting richer. My bank account doesn't get bigger. My prices go up. Bingo. It's simple. Once again, that is the most simple, effective message in American politics. It's not being made by either side today. And it's like I said, Holly. And look, it's like with the AOC thing, right? Yeah. It's like you have somebody here who beat a sitting incumbent Democratic senator in a swing state of Missouri with an actual nationalist message, and this person isn't a lock for the Republican National Convention speaking slot. I mean, what are you doing?
Look, Holly, I have issues there too, but at least he's saying something that's a little bit interesting that people are responding to. in the Republican base, and that's much more consistent with what Trump ran on to start with. I mean, what do you think happened there? How did he end up in this place? Is it bad advice? Is it being too encapsulated in the White House? Because you see the same thing with a lot of presidents where it's very isolating and it's just this really, like airtight bubble that you live in the White House. You come very disconnected. Is that basically what's happened with him?
He got screwed from day one. During the transition, whenever he let Jared Kushner run the transition, fire Chris Christie, who actually had some people who were going to work there. And then he hired people like Reince Priebus and others in order to come in. Reince brought in Paul Ryan, his old friend, and Paul Ryan was like, don't worry, we've got the House, we've got the Senate, we'll run everything for you. And Trump was like, okay. He's like, I don't really know much about this whole governance stuff. That was it. And then, they packed his cabinet. People like Gary Cohn and Larry Kudlow, many of these other figures who went and worked for him and held off anything that he really wanted to do or promised to do in the early years. And next thing you know, everybody in Washington will tell you this. You only have really a year and a half to be president. The rest of the time you're running for re-election. So that year and a half, right before the midterms, it's basically squandered, screwed. Everything they tried to do, completely screwed up, except for the tax bill, of course, because that's the only thing that the Republican Party actually
They had that locked and loaded, ready to go.
And he never wanted to expend political capital. By the time he lost the House, it was over, right? And that's essentially what's happened. And now he seems to believe their narrative about how he should be running for election, which could not be more counter to how he actually won in 2016. Maybe it was all fluke. Maybe it was just a dice roll, rolled up once, like on the craps table. It got very lucky. But this time around, the odds are certainly stacked against him. For this reason. It doesn't have to be this way, but,
Yeah, I think that's very well said.
All right, I'm looking forward to your radar next, Crystal.